welcome to the Snapcast, everyone. That's right, drum breakdown. Oh yeah.
Man, this is like episode 8, which I think with our pilot really is 9.
Yeah, something like that, man. We're cruising right along.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is everyone? Hope everyone had a great week, man. It's still snowing out here, right? Still snowing. We still made it here, regardless of the weather, to tell you guys what we think, all right? So we really hope you appreciate what you're hearing each week, because we're risking life and limb to get out here for you.
And I appreciate all the credit that Mike gives me because we record the podcast at my house, so I basically just come home. So thank you for venturing out in the snow, passing all those snow-covered permanents on the way over.
That's right, man. See, he's calling it a dad joke last week, and now it's just stuck. That's the problem with those dad jokes. They just stick right in your brain, bro.
Trope now. Now it's just part of the show. So we had some fun last night. We played some Modern last night.
Oh, man. This is the first time I've played Modern in, some number of months now, man. I've been out of the game ever since, well, you see, for a while, I was practicing for Wheel of Fortune. And, you know, I know that doesn't sound like an excuse. Like, I should still be playing Magic, right? But, you know, at the same time, that's a big opportunity. So, practicing for that. And then as soon as I get back from that, man, what did they do? They banned my fucking Mox Opals. And I was like, well, shit, that'll teach me not to play Modern, man. So then I've just been brainstorming and trying to find a deck that inspires me, man. And finally made it back yesterday and played Modern. And I got to see this guy at the shop, man.
And I was on the same deck that I've been on the whole time.
The survivable deck we were talking about that makes it through all of these damn changes in Modern. So I have a fucking humans deck, man. And you played it pretty well last night, too, man. Second place finish.
Yeah, not too bad. My only loss was to the player that did end up coming in first place. We had a very diverse group of players last night, for sure.
Yeah.
Good prize support. It was a good time.
Yeah, it was really good, man. We actually had quite a number of new players come up to the shop yesterday, which I was super happy about, man. Bangor at Game Citadel is a really good community to come into if you're a new player. Like, God love these guys. You could tell this might have been like one of their first REL. Well, I mean, I don't know if you can consider it like a real competitive tournament out there, but like their first bigger tournament that they would go to for Modern. Like, they didn't really have tier 1 decks, and they were like shuffling their cards in like the weirdest ways. Like, they'd separate their lands and
they were almost mana weaving, but not quite.
Yeah, I mean, it was, let's call it what it is. It was practically mana weaving, like,
having little.
But at the same time, like, you just have a good group of people that's just like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, if you go to a more competitive venue here, you might want to rethink about how you shuffle your deck, you know, because some would consider that mana weaving, that, you know, your deck is not entirely random when you do that. You know, just kind of coaching them through that. They're actually really cool, man, like really receptive to all of that stuff too. So good place for
and they knew, I mean, they knew their cards. They knew what was going on in the game state. I didn't have any issues with that sort of thing. Seeing like an 80 to 100 card stack of unsleeved cards made me wince a little bit when I saw some foil planeswalkers that looked almost white bordered.
Oh man, yeah, this is so beat up. But hey, that is the essence of Magic, ain't it? Like, you crack some packs and you put a deck together and you're like, you know what, man, I'm gonna take this to a tournament and mess some people up with it.
And it really is a healthy reminder that the player base of this game is so much more broad than I interact with really on a regular basis. We talk about this a lot. If you're listening to an MTG podcast, you are the classically enfranchised player.
Yeah.
I don't know how many kitchen table players are spending their time listening to podcasts about Magic. They just want to play.
Right.
It's just a game. It's not an obsession.
See, all it takes is that one friend that's got that one deck that you can't beat, and then you start looking online, and you're like, all right, well, what do I do? What do I got for answers here? And then you find these sites like MTG Top 8 and Star City Games, and you're, you know, checking out all these different strategies. Before you know it, you're like starting to build the tier 1 deck, and then your buddy's got to build the tier 1 deck to, you know, to catch up with you. Before you know it, you guys are playing at your local game shop, and, you know, pretty competitively. That's all it takes, man.
speaking of power creep, there are a lot of new cards, and I think I keep saying this all the time, but man, we said it before, we'll say it again. Cards that are being printed in the last 2 years are all over Modern, Pioneer, EDH. We saw a deck last night that I haven't seen at a tournament in a long time.
Very long time. What was it, Brad?
Well, I don't want to go on about this ad nauseum, but we were right again.
I see what you did there.
Ad nauseum was in our shop last night, and it was great. And why did that deck? What brought that deck to that player's attention?
Dude, Thassas Oracle, man. A new card that was just printed in the most recent set, making that deck too. It's kind of cool. In case you guys aren't familiar, Ad Nauseam allows you basically to draw your entire deck at the cost of the mana cost per card that you draw, or that you place into your hand, which is very important. So obviously you play stuff like Angel's Grace or Phyrexian Unlife and make it so that you can't lose the game that turn for having 0 or less life. And then you just jam all of your deck into your hand and play something like Thassas Oracle, which says, when it comes into the battlefield, scry X, which is X is equal to your devotion to blue. And if X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. So if they just drew their whole deck, they have no cards in their library and they just win right there on the spot. Like, pretty solid, man. It used to be that they would use a card called Lightning Storm, which it looks like most decks still run that for Ad Nauseam. Some even that are running Thassas Oracle. It's just a second win condition. Thassas Oracle is just so much more efficient, man. Like there's so much less to explain with it. You know what I mean?
Yep. And again, that's a card that was just printed in the most recent set. Is in the top deck in Pioneer. Is in a we obviously wouldn't call it a tier 1 deck, but maybe a tier 2, 2.5 deck in Modern. Ad Nauseam constantly pops up every once in a while and just wins a tournament or something because the meta gets soft to a combo.
That's the thing about Modern, man, is like so many decks will disappear and then come back into the limelight. Like it just all depends on what the meta game is and what people are prepared for. I mean, the second people start, preparing for one deck, something else pops up. Like it's just like Mill. Like Mill has been one of my favorite pet decks for a very long time. You'll see that pop up in some meta games every once in a while and just like take down a tournament because nobody's running Tron or like nobody's running, Burn or whatnot. It's for whatever reason, like that deck just kills it.
How many cards you got left in your library?
Hey, it would be cool for Mill. Against Mill, you just sideboard in some Thassas Oracles.
Yikes. Thank you for the pump. What else happened that was really cool last night? Well, you got to audition a new deck.
Yeah, man.
Tell us what you played last night.
Oh, God. So I kind of alluded to it in the last podcast, man. It's like my favorite deck archetype to ever be made. And I finally got to play it at a time where I feel like it's pretty competitive and pretty fun to play. And I use the word competitive pretty loosely. Like it may or may not be competitive. I just haven't jammed enough games with it yet to really decide. But, dude, that deck is Dice Factory, man. And the only reason I love this deck is because you have the potential to play Magistrate Scepter in it. And I know there's probably a lot of players out there that do not know what Magistrate Scepter is because it is a probably pretty shit card. Like not a lot of people run it. It's just really weird, but it's one of those cards, right? Where if you're a new player, like when I think of myself back in those days of the players yesterday that came into the shop, this is the card I was all fired up about. I hear him talking about these weird ass combos like, oh, I can cast all my slivers for free with this new Modern Horizons guy and some artifact. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like,
until he got dream crushed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's not actually how that works. Womp womp.
But this I was all fanboy about Magistrate Scepter from Mercadian Masks way back in the day. It was like one of the first cards that I cracked, and I figured out that you can put charge counters on artifacts in alternative ways. Like you can use cards like Core Tapper or Surge Node. Or back in my day, it was Energy Chamber was the card that I used, which is, two drop artifact. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on an artifact creature you control, or put a charge counter on an artifact. So I was like, oh, sweet. So I just jam that. Every upkeep, I get a charge counter on it. So, yeah, that's right. That's right. So Magistrate Scepter, to explain this card, because people may not know what it is, it's just so random. It's a 3-drop artifact, and it has 2 abilities. The first ability is pay for and tap it, put a charge counter on it. The second ability is tap it, remove 3 charge counters from it, take an extra turn after this one. So you can see where I was so fanboy about it. Like, you can get 3 core tappers or 3 ways to generate a counter per turn on your Magistrate Scepter and take infinite turns. And I was so fired up about it. I ran this deck in Vintage, man. Like, this was way back in the day. I actually did fairly well with it in Vintage, surprisingly, because, you know, as soon as Chalice of the Void got printed, like, I was just jamming those out and switching counters around and everything. Like, it was just locking games up and people couldn't do anything. So it was really probably because of the power level of those other cards that kind of carried me through this. Yeah, but cards that, you know, Chalice is now restricted in Vintage for that exact reason. It just locks games out, man. But yeah, so I ran Dice Factory last night. I placed I think like 3rd or 4th. I don't know. I actually cashed. I got some packs, so that was cool. My only loss was to your fan deck over there. It was Humans. Humans.
Los Hermanos. So I heard somebody actually in the MTG Humans Facebook group today.
There's a fucking MTG Facebook group for Humans players.
I bet you will find one for Dice Factory if you go looking.
There's Facebook groups for everything.
There really is. Things you don't want to know about. But I heard a comparison today that made me think of you, and I wonder what your take on this is. Somebody posted, is Humans even a good deck anymore? I never see it show up on Goldfish. It's not in any of the lists. What's going on? And somebody said, Humans is the new Affinity. It's always going to be a good deck. It could always win a tournament, and it's got a good, powerful game plan, but it's never going to be the best deck again.
Okay.
He's got a personal feeling about this.
With the exception of the last thing you said, I would agree that it is the new Affinity. With the new bannings, when Mox Opal is out and your format has slowed down, that is absolutely the new Affinity. I would agree with it. As a longtime Affinity player, you know, basically, we just relied on having a semi-linear game plan with a lot of tricks. Like, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what it was. You have your Arcbound Ravager, you have your Cranial Plating, which, you know, for a while most people didn't know could equip at the speed of an instant. Like, you know, there's just a lot of tricks that Affinity had that you wouldn't necessarily think of. Arcbound Ravager being the big one. Humans sort of does the same thing. It's got like a linear game plan. It's like, I'm going to crack some humans at your face. Yep. Like, I'm going to attack you. That's how I'm going to get there. I'm not casting any trickery.
Each one is a little shifty.
Yep. But it's got tons of tricks. Like, it's got, you know, Meddling Mage. It's got well-timed Reflector Mages. It's got well-timed Deputies of Detention. And also well-timed Kitesail Freebooters that just, you know, the deck is so versatile. In fact, when I lost to our friend Leaf last night when he was playing Humans, and it had occurred to me...
Leaf.
It occurred to me at that point, like halfway playing through Leaf, I must have got this look on my face like, I don't know this fucking deck enough to like play against someone who knows what the hell they're doing with Humans. I was like...
Right. And don't beat yourself up. First tournament with a new deck.
Yep.
Everybody will say, that's the game in Modern is you have to know your deck against the meta.
Oh, exactly.
Once you know that and you know all the matchups, then you can start to assess whether or not you're making mistakes, you're doing things like...
Oh, yeah. Granted, Leaf didn't even know what friggin' deck I was on before we started playing. He had no idea what deck I was on. And he, like, turned to Freebooters, and he sees, like, Karn, the Great Creator, Yugen, and, like, some charge counter trickery. And he's like, So he takes the Karn... because that's what a smart fucking player does, because he knows I'm not close to casting Yugen. So he takes Karn, and then Meddling Mage comes out next turn and names a Yugen. And I'm like, I got nothing. Like, I have no removal besides 2 walking ballistas in the main deck. And I'm like, I'm just sitting here. I'm going to get beat to death in the next few turns with nothing to do about it. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. You know, next turn, he just meddling mage, called the same card. Phantasmal image, copied it, called the other card. And I'm just like, well,
That was fun.
yeah, like this, it's over, man. Like, but you know, he had no idea what deck I was on. Like, he just knows what he's doing with humans. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Like, it also, I think, speaks to the power level of the humans deck. Like, it can quickly. It's one of the best decks I've ever seen in Modern that can so easily adapt to whatever deck it's playing. And that's why the last thing that you had mentioned that this person said, I do not agree with. I think in the right hands, it has a potential to be the best deck in the format.
I think best deck in the form. I see a difference in that. In the hands of a great pilot in a tournament, can crush a tournament. I don't think it can broadly be the best deck in the format. I mean, it was for a minute.
Think of it this way, dude. Like, any deck you build, any deck you bring to a tournament, there's certain decks you do not want to play against. And fucking humans, every deck I've ever had, including Hardened Scales, which people say has a natural advantage over humans.
Go on.
I still didn't like playing humans. It was the only deck that I struggled with, because if you landed a fucking meddling mage before I landed a walking ballista, well, now all of the game changes. Like, you know what I mean? Now I have to really think about what I'm going to do.
The humans player gets to play a game.
Exactly. They get to play a game. But also, if I don't draw a walking ballista, if I don't have a walking ballista, you can probably crack me just as quickly with, you know, some minimal disruption along the way. That could be just enough. Like, you know, it's I think in the right hands with, like, humans is, granted, it was always a crapshoot with, like, Hardened Scales, but, like, it just has so much potential. Like, name me a deck that goes into a tournament and says, yeah, I always beat humans.
Oh yeah. No.
Like,
and you know, not to call it shunned, but it could be just the 50% deck, and depending on how a person builds it that week. Like last night, there were 2 humans players in our shop, and we were on distinctly different builds.
both got like second and third, I think, too, by the way. Like,
yeah.
That's...
Yeah, I went back to the main deck Deputy of Detentions and Kessig Malcontents because of the prevalence of Heliod and the collected company decks that some of the players like Doofer and so bad with names sometimes. Other players at the shop are playing that humans doesn't have an out to a combo piece. Like, okay, we talked a little bit about Ad Nauseam. Phyrexian Unlife. Once that's in play, most lists or some lists of humans are pretty screwed.
Are they, though? Because then you just jam Meddling Mage and call Ad Nauseam, and what the hell are they going to do?
Well, right, so then what do? Just call it a draw, or go to decking, like, see who has enough cards in their deck? Like,
just crack them over the face.
Well, they don't lose the game for having 0 or less life.
Yeah, but then, when they're at 0 or less life, they get dealt combat damage as though it's Source Head Infect. So you just keep cracking them, and they can't play a fucking... Ad Nauseam, and they fucking lose. I don't think they have any ways to get rid of that besides the one of Lightning Storm in their main deck. They can't get rid of it.
Yeah, well, I think in a sideboard game, they've probably got access to push, path.
Oh, for sure. But, like, what are you bringing in? You're bringing in...
Onto's Last Reckoning. But what I'm saying is I built my main deck to have some interaction in Game 1 against... something like that with the Deputy of Detention or, okay, last night I ended up playing against a crazy Platinum Angel deck where I had...
Meme deck.
I just had, I don't even know, 20 creatures in play, and it didn't matter because I couldn't affect his life total at all. and was looking at Kessig Malcontents going, okay, you're no good here. But if I can draw this Deputy of Detention, okay, Deputy, get the enchantment off the battlefield.
Yeah.
Phantasmal Image, take 2 creatures off the battlefield.
The enchantment he's talking about, this is the first time I've seen it too. I forget what it's called, but it's a 2-drop enchantment, and it says, this is the first time I've ever seen it, and it says, the creature with the highest converted mana costs on the battlefield. Creatures with the highest converted mana cost have protection from all colors. So his angel had protection from all colors. He slams this 2-drop enchantment very early, and then like Madcap experiments into a fucking angel, and now like, it's meme worthy, man.
Yeah, and so that he goes Platinum Angel. I go, Image your Platinum Angel. He just starts shaking his head. So then he plays a second Platinum Angel. Vile Image. I also have a second Platinum Angel.
What?
He says swing. I say, yep. Block.
Yeah, because they have protection from all colors, but Angel is colorless. It's a 7-drop 4/4 that says you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win. So
yeah, it would be the only thing in my deck I could block with.
See, look at that. Then there's always these. Leaf said this to me last night too. There's always these random ass decks that show up in a format that you have no fucking idea what they're running in it and what they're trying to do. And when you cast a Kite Sail Freebooter, you're like, huh, like what's going on here? And your main deck can deal with a fucking Platinum Angel on the board just by copying it. Just being like, yep, this is a game you want to play. That's fine. Yep, no problem. Like, that's so fucking cool to me, man. Like, it's really good. It's really good. I love humans, dude. I just refuse to play it.
I love some humans.
Yeah,
unless they're playing Hardened Scales.
I just refuse to play humans because some douchebags that I know play it.
Oh, we don't need another humans player in our meta. Then we'd really get hated out. Man, so Wizards announced a new product that's going to be coming out soon. Yeah, dude, those Challenger decks. You guys seen those yet? There's 4 Challenger decks that they're releasing. We're curious to know what you guys think of these. So please post in the comments your thoughts and stay tuned and we'll tell us ours. What do you think, man? You brought these up to me and you were pretty you're feeling some type of way. That's a good way to put it. Well, I do feel a sort of way. I like the idea that they are back to printing a pre-constructed product that anybody could walk into the shop, buy for F&M, and play and not look like a total dick. You know, these are almost all 4 perfectly reasonable playable decks. Each of them have really good value cards, which from a MTG Finance perspective makes a lot of people sweat. Like, oh god, they printed a Brazen Borrower in one of these decks. Yeah. Okay, well, there's only one. Right. Rudy had actually mentioned something about that. About he's like, it's crazy to me that we live in a world where Magic releases a set and then 2 months later reprints cards in that set. And it's kind of an interesting concept to think about, really. Like, we think of reprints and we think of cards that are like so far out of standard, like modern staples, commander staples. These reprints were just printed. Yep. Like, granted, some of them have a pretty high price tag on them, like the Fabled Passage that they're reprinting, the Embercleave, like you said, the Brazen Borrower. I mean, some of them have some pretty high price tags on them. Well, and some of them will never, ever see a high price. Now I'm wondering, is this set to paper or online? Some of these prices look funky. Some of them might have dropped, too, because whenever they announce stuff like this, people start pitching their extras and, you know. Well, and I definitely want to give credit where credit is due. We have the MTG Goldfish website up to look at their article on these decks. Go read the article on there. Lots of awesome information. Really laid out very cleanly. So in paper, this Allied Fires deck is $74 in total value currently. And these don't add up. So this is definitely the online price.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but see, so this is what we've seen with challenger decks before, and you had kind of alluded to this, and I sort of feel this way about these ones. These challenger decks would have been a great idea to release at like the beginning of this month. Like, you know what I mean? It would have been amazing. Like, I think the sales on these would have gone through the roof on the beginning of this month. But if you look at MTGO or MTGA Worlds that just happened, some of these decks are kind of already missing some crucial cards in there. Like, you know, the red deck, when we first saw that, you and I were like, yeah, this is sweet. Like, this is borderline tier 1. After Worlds, we're like, well, it doesn't have Robber of the Rich. Like, you know, it only has one Embercleave. Like, you know, you kind of look at it. Granted, it's great that they reprinted Embercleave. It's going to bring the price of it down. You can pick up more if you need to.
Oh, sorry. Let me go back to it. You might be right. Yeah, one Embercleave.
One Embercleave.
So, from a finance perspective, it's not tanking the deck. But it's going to bring down the price of Embercleaves generally.
Oh, for
so
sure.
If a player wants to play this deck, they've got the whole shell and have to put out for a couple more cards. That's always going to be true with a pre-con.
Oh, for sure.
And they have to have a meta that's pretty established before they can even set a deck list, send it to printers, have them collated and packaged and all that.
Oh, for sure. And that takes time. Like, you know, but another thing about the red deck that's kind of already obsolete about it, and granted, I feel bad even bringing it up because it's not really a big money card. You can get a playset for like $2, but it's Annex Hardened by the Forge. Like, all your red decks are running that now in standard because it's just so resilient. Like, you know, all of your fires decks and your control decks are running cards that wipe the board. And when you have an Annex Hardened by the Forge on the board, they wipe the board, but really not to any advantage of their own. Like, you know, all of your creatures that just died are going to bring back 1/1 dudes, and your opponent's going to have another problem on their hands next turn. You know what I mean? That's swinging at them next turn. So, you know, I saw lists at Worlds that were running 4 of those main deck. And like, but, you know, I guess my point is that by the time they release this, the release date is set for April. These just might be
passe.
Yeah, exactly. Like they might have already fallen out of favor, and the deck list is so different. You know, just because it kind of takes time. Like when you vet a list like this, when you have people test it, when you have, you know, all of these great ideas, I think you should really rush to get that out because the metagame, even in standard these days, is changing so fast. You know, we don't see any of our decks in there. The Bogle's deck.
Mike's wearing cologne.
Am I?
Something.
I
You just smell good?
Naturally, dude.
Actually, what I was thinking is you're just so far away from me.
My pores emit cologne. That's what it is. I get out of the shower and I'm just like, God damn, man, I smell good. Pores just leaking that Armani code, you know?
So, I played a standard event this past weekend. The only standard event I've played all season. I played Mono Red. Had a good conversation beforehand with our mutual friend from Game Citadel, K-Flag. And we talked about the Robber of the Rich, which is a card that I really like. But when you look at the World's meta, it's a super tight. I mean, it's a 16-player tournament, and everybody knows that there's going to be one of 4 decks. All of the red players, Seth Manfield and others, they left out Shock because they knew that Shock was not going to be good in that meta.
Yeah.
And so having a hasty creature that might give you card advantage, even though it's 2-drop, whatever, was a better deal. But broadly, going to your FNMs, going to a GP or an Open or something like that that's standard, I don't think you can run that list with 4 Robber of the Rich. You need to run some number of Shocks or other interaction.
Well, it also depends on how competitive your metagame is. I think if you go to Bangor, granted I haven't played standard here in a while, but we have some really good standard players, man. Like we have some really good players in general. So when they show up for standard, it's like I know Blanchard's always going to be on a good deck. Like, I know that it's going to be some tier 1 deck that he's probably going to be really good with. You know what I mean? I know Doofer, he's likely also going to be on some tier 1 deck that
whatever
he's tested
the
on
best
Arena.
deck is, or whatever the next best deck is going to be.
Like, and he's probably really
good
with it playing it on Arena. Like, he's probably playing it in other venues than just the shop. So, you know what I mean? He's going to be one of those players. And then also GB, like, I've seen him at standard events before, and he's always, like, regardless of what deck he's on, just plays it very well. And so I don't know. I guess it really depends on your metagame. I feel like...
So GB was at this event this weekend. He scabbed together cards from 4 different people to put together Simic Flash and went undefeated.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just talking about him, man. We were talking about, the unique control-y sort of... I mean, literally just talking about him playing this type of deck. Like, the control deck that can turn the corner very quickly. And he was playing Simic Flash down at... it was in Augusta, Maine. And
Game On.
Yeah, Game On Cafe. And what was it? It was like it
was a Worlds viewing event where they had WotC had given them 16 promotional copies of Crucible of Worlds.
Pretty sweet art too, man. New art, foil. You got one of those copies you can jam up and put in front of the camera just in case?
If not, I'm actually going to work on this episode to put a couple of
pop-ups in there. So right now you might be seeing a pop-up of this new Crucible of Worlds right there.
I'm going to put it someplace totally different.
But yeah, it's pretty sweet. And they just gave you those for finishing, right?
Yep.
Like, there was, I think they said top 16, but like 16 people showed up. So everybody got a foil Crucible of Worlds, which is pretty sweet.
2 got a sweet promo.
Makes me feel like shit for not going to that event. But yeah, man. So he did really well with that, which is also, it's so funny because you don't see much Simic Flash that was in the top 16 there. I think some players were on like a version of Euro, but dude, like also in these challenger decks,
let's get back to this.
Yeah, like these challenger decks, it brings up Simic, but like at this point,
because they do have Flash of Ferocity.
Yeah, and they have some great cards in it. Don't get me wrong, but where the hell is your reprint of Euro in this deck? Like, how is that not in the Flash of Ferocity Challenger deck? Like, you didn't think, even if you designed this months ahead of time and you're Wizards of the Coast, right? You print a 6/6 for 3 mana in Simic colors and you don't think that's going to be used in Standard? You don't think, like, I had to put it in the deck?
They gave you a Brazen Borrower.
They did, man, but Jesus, like, this is already obsolete. Like, you know what I mean? And granted, GB was running 3 Hydroid Krasis. I don't see a Hydroid Krasis in here. You know what I mean? Like that's a card that wasn't just printed.
Decks.
Yeah.
They can't print a perfect deck into some future time in the meta.
Oh,
that's an
sure.
unreasonable expectation.
Oh, for sure not. But like it couldn't hurt to throw a few more copies out there of like, Hydroid Krasis and Euro. Like couldn't hurt, Wizards. Come on.
It is interesting. So looking at the Goldfish prices, the Fires of Invention deck looks like the lowest dollar value based on current prices. But Narset Partervales will never be worth anything ever again. It was an uncommon to begin with.
Yep. And then it just got 4 reprints in this deck.
You got 4 right off the bat. Our buddy Ugin printed 1 copy in there.
Yep, so he's probably going to go down to $1.50, $2. Get him, dude. Get him.
Yeah.
Like when that tank's at $1, get him.
Yeah, we should. I got some we got some flashbacks to talk about and some shit to write down.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Ugin, the Ineffable might be a good.
Write this shit down.
Write this shit down because when this comes out, they probably will go down in price, but not in the long term.
Oh, yeah.
The card is just too good not to have value.
So, the flashback. Flashback is a segment where we're going to be talking about, we're going to be referring to previous podcasts where we might have spec'd on a card or said, hey, either write this down or pick this shit up.
Snap this shit up.
Or snap this shit up, right. And yes, we still need to get that snappy sound.
Oh, man, that's what we need is just a recorded, yeah.
Failed this week, Brad. Failed.
You have failed this podcast.
So, Flashback is going to be a segment about that, like kind of looking at things that we had talked about in the past and kind of revisiting them. Likely our successes, although we patting ourselves on the back. I won't be afraid to call my failings too. Like, you know what I mean? And to say, look, we said this,
some
but
random way I do, I guess
there's certain things you can't predict with cards. Like you can't necessarily predict a reprint. You definitely, in my case, can't predict the banning. Like, so.
We've already had one loyal listener message me to say, hey, my Heliod's are going down.
That's bullshit, okay? They are
fake news.
Fake news. They are going up, man. I'm not sure if you guys watch the Heroes and Legends channel on YouTube, but they have a great channel, man. They talk about every week just card prices that, basically moving card prices each week in various different formats: Pioneer, Standard, Modern, even Eternal formats like Legacy and Vintage. They touch upon sometimes.
Commander, yep.
Pauper, even. And one of the cards that had gone up this week, significant enough to make that list, was Heliod Suncrowned. Had gone up a pretty significant percent. Like, it was $1.77, and on like a $15 card, that's pretty significant. I've had too much of the vodka. I can't calculate the percent in my head, but it's like a little, like 11, 12%, something like that.
And I will say, and this is what I said in response to that comment. Oh, that's awesome. That means you can get more even cheaper.
Oh, yeah, when he said that the price went down, yeah.
That night, we talked with another player that was playing Heliod Company and just how good that deck is.
So good, dude.
Another Flashback, and that deck was a card that you called out.
Karn the Great Creator. Like, they're using Karn the Great Creator in these Heliod decks, which at first I asked him, it was Doofer, I said, I was kind of offended because I had brought an all artifact deck to the tournament. And I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, why are you having main deck Karns in your deck? And then he said, he goes, because you can tutor for a win condition out of your sideboard when you have infinite life. Like, Karn not only is an oppressive card in your deck, but like you can tutor for answers if your game's getting slow, but also if you happen to have like a 30 trillion life, you can go tutor for Aetherflux Reservoir and just end the game. That's pretty friggin' sweet.
That is pretty friggin' sweet. And yeah. I did hear him use that for a win con in one of his games.
That's really good, man. Like, Karn, some people have said, like, I'm surprised this is still good after the Mycosynth Lattice ban. We were talking about that. Karn is so good, regardless of Mycosynth Lattice.
And that's why he suits the Flashback segment.
Absolutely, man.
So one other card that we talked about in a prior episode that I think is worthy of flashing back this week is Fabled Passage.
Hell yeah. Especially with these new Challenger decks.
So between the Challenger decks, I think one has one copy. Final Adventure has one copy.
Flash has one copy.
Flash of Ferocity has one copy.
Yep. So,
yes, there will be more of those in the wild. There's no getting around it. It's still, and they say it themselves down here in the Goldfish article where they talk about what long-term value are in these decks. They talk about Fabled Passage as being one of the cards that survives rotation.
Absolutely.
Meaning, even after all of the Ravnica sets rotate out, even after M20 rotates out, you're still going to be able to play Fabled Passage into the next standard rotation. And they're labeling, they're saying it's a Pioneer and Commander staple.
Oh, absolutely. If there was one deck to pick up out of these new Challenger decks, like if you go to your local game store, or you go to Walmart or whatnot, and they get them for $30, pick up the Flash deck, just because it has a Brazen Borrower in it and it has a Fabled Passage in it. So there's your value right there, right? Like, all of the rest of the stuff is pretty bonus. But just like Brad said, the Fabled Passage will survive rotation. It sort of reminds me of the deck that they printed that had Verdant Catacombs in it. 2 copies of Verdant Catacombs in some like deck you could buy in stores. Yep, and it was like $20-$30 at the time. Like, stupid. And me and my buddy saw that and we're like, Okay, so just buy all of these that we see, right? Because this card survives rotation.
Well,
any of the ones that contain Fabled Passage, get them, dude.
You look at the Challenger decks that came out during Aether Revolt Kaladesh that had Walking Ballista and Chandra Torch of Defiance in them. Walking Ballista is worth more now than that whole deck.
Exactly.
So these are not bad. And the cards that are going to see play and the cards that are valuable will rebound because they're played. So I think you're right. I think Flash of Ferocity is a good pickup. I think the one Embercleave might make that deck worthwhile. If you're going to play mono red, you can pick that up and it gives you most of it.
The card that I see from that deck that may survive rotation is Runaway Steamkin and Bone Crusher Giant.
Runaway Steamkin rotates.
Yep. So, or I'm sorry, by survive rotation, I mean like
have play long.
Yeah,
after.
like like its playability is far beyond just standard.
Yep.
And even zoo decks in modern right now are using the giant. So you know that's a pretty good value, but I'm not sure if you'll immediately notice your value buying the red deck because Embercleaves will go down. And let's be serious. I'm gonna feel like a rebel saying this, but Embercleave ain't surviving. Like when it rotates out, the price of that card is going down hard. Like that is not a good card. Like I'm sorry, I know it's really good in standard right now. Embercleave in any other format, not a good card.
This is gonna be one of our first.
Maybe Commander. I will say that. Maybe Commander.
Damn it! No, you can't steal my thunder now because that's it. This legendary enchantment is perfect for any kind of aggressive Commander deck that has red in it. So that's sort of our flashback segment. We talked about Fabled Passage. I think that this reprint is going to bring down the price, but it gives us an opportunity to talk about something that's going to pay off, I think, this whole year. This year is going to be the year of Commander products. WotC said it. They're going to do a lot of reprinting this year. Full arts, alternate arts, foils are never going to show up in a reprint. The longer something stays as a staple in its particular format, the more likely somebody's going to want to have the pimp version.
True. You know, if they reprint Heliod Suncrowned, that showcase version ain't gonna go down proportionately. You know, it might still go down in price because people have options.
Yeah.
But long-term value, that card has a more limited print run than the original Heliod. So, good point, man. And Heliod is definitely a card that I could see them reprinting that in some of these Commander decks. Like, I could definitely see it. People love gods, man, myself included. Like, there's so many cool things you can do with the gods cards. Like, you know, look at Perforos. Perforos was like a $2-3 mythic at one point. And look at all the crazy shit people do in Commander with that card. And now it's like a, $15-$20 card. You know what I mean? It's just because there's so much cool stuff you can do with it. What's the card that
gives all of your creatures infect? There's one that's like, your whole team gets +1/+1 and infect.
Is it a dragon? The dragon guy? The black flying dragon?
Is that Butcher of the Horde? No. What am I? No, he's a demon. Anyway, I heard somebody talking about a combo with OG Perforos where you could use, once he's turned on and he's a creature.
He deals infect damage.
He deals infect damage. Now, I wonder if that's, I got to think about that. Everybody tells me that that's not how Nekusar works.
If Nekusar deals the damage, that is definitely how Nekusar works. If they lose one life per card that they draw, then that's definitely not how it works.
Nekusar definitely deals damage.
So that is definitely how it works. If he had infect, he would deal that damage by infect. Yep.
I've got two cards that I want to talk about. One is another sort of segment that I hadn't even mentioned to Mike before, but that is Snap Keep.
Snap Keep?
Yeah.
This sounds interesting. Much like some of our viewers, Brad, I'm very intrigued by what Snapkeep means. Can you please tell me?
Much like some of our viewers, I wonder what the hell you're doing.
Yep, come on now.
There are cards that you're going to look at and think, this is worth $3. This really isn't worth my time. I'm going to throw it in my trade binder, or I'm going to forget about it. But I think that there are some cards that are like that. Like, if there's a card that's $3, there's a reason. And if you don't see it being played anywhere, it's not in any performing deck list, but it's an in-print rare for $3, that's because people in Commander are playing Guardian Project. And let me bring up this card, because this is another one that we should...
Oh, you're typing over Thassas Oracle over there.
And I think I'm typing in Klingon. Guardian Project. This card is great. So this is an enchantment.
Okay. So bring this up, and I will read this to our viewers because it's new to me as well.
3 and a green.
God, this image is all pixelated. Oh, shit. God damn it. You had a description right there for me.
I did.
You're so smart, Brad, and I'm so dumb.
It's very large text.
I don't know if it's big enough for me to read, but yeah, so it's it's Guardian Project. It's an enchantment for 4 mana, 1 green, 3 colorless. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. Pro tip, the Guardian Project gives mono-green commander decks the card draw they need.
So in a commander deck, you're not going to have any 2 creatures with the same name, just because you're not playing any of those crazy cards that let you play that many copies. But so in mono green or in any X green creature deck in Commander, this says play a creature, draw a card. Play a creature, draw a card.
It's not bad. Is there any other options out there?
Beast Whisperer does the same thing.
Yeah, I was also thinking, like, alternatively, if you're thinking card draw too. Not a lot of people usually use this for value. I've seen it more in combo decks in Modern recently, but Fecundity is it's kind of the opposite of it. Like, whenever a creature you control or anybody controls dies, they draw a card. So it kind of benefits your opponent too. So I guess, yeah, it's less mana cost and benefits your opponent. Yes, okay, Beast Whisperer, 4 mana. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. See, I would feel like that would be better in mono green.
Just because it's a body?
It's a body, it's the same mana cost, and it has no it has less restrictions. So if the enchantment you're talking about says if a non-token creature comes into play. So not only do you need to cast it, but it needs to resolve. Also effects such as like Torpor Orb, not a lot of people are running that in Commander, but like, effects that kind of stifle enter the battlefield effects are gonna mess that right up. But that creature, not only is it a body, but it's on cast. I would feel like that would be pretty dope. Like a better alternative, I should say. What makes the enchantment better? Brad is mouthing a bunch of stuff.
My mic stopped. Oh, shit. The internet has decided.
The internet has decided.
Because Guardian Project is a $4.68 card versus Beast Whisperer, which is a $2.77 card.
I see. So were we on the same page with this assertion here? Is that what you're saying? We're on the same page with this.
What do you mean?
Do you also believe Beast Whisperer is a better card?
No.
No. Okay. I guess we're not on the same page with it.
I'm saying Beast Whisperer, a rare from an imprint or a recently printed set, is selling for less than Guardian Project. So I'm saying the hive mind may have determined that Guardian Project has more value.
Now, granted, to Guardian Project's defense, there's a lot of creature removal in Commander in a lot of formats, right?
Yep.
And the creature removal does not hit Guardian Project, which is something to be said in and of itself.
Right. Somebody wraths the board, you don't lose your card engine, your card draw
Right.
engine. Guardian Project also works well with Blink.
Yeah, that's a really good point, dude.
I want to like try a Guardian Project Ephemerate deck and
Deadeye Navigator.
bring it back, draw a card. Bring it back, draw a card.
Yeah, even then though, you're paying 2 mana for a card. I don't know, dude. I feel like that's overpriced. I wouldn't pay $5 for that piece of shit. Look at that, dude.
Time will tell, but I think you should write this shit down.
You think so? Okay. I'm on the other side of it, clearly. I think you should put it this way. I can definitely see it being used in Commander. I'm not sure if it's at this point, whereas it's in the Ravnica set, a $5 card. I think it might even tank to like $1. And at that point.
And so, what do we say our write this shit down segment is about?
That's true. Wait for it to go down a little bit and pick it up, because it will definitely be used. I can see it being used, and yep, it will likely go down in value. So when it does,
at rotation, trade for 'em.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, man. I gotta get these segments right. I mean, here I am thinking you're saying invest in this stuff. You're saying no, think about this stuff. Yep, that's a good point, dude. So we're looking up, what is this site? EDH Rec?
EDH Rec.
EDREC.
This is a killer EDH resource, Commander, Elder Dragon, Highlander, whatever you want to call it. Resource where basically players upload their deck lists, and this site maintains the largest data set based on players that have uploaded their decks. So you have this data. So Guardian Project as a card is in 13,127 decks. It is in 10% of the 134,495 decks that they have in their database.
Okay, so now you're speaking my language. Like, regardless of how I feel about this card, I am a numbers guy. I run a whole bunch of numbers for a living. And when you're talking 10% of decks run Guardian Project, that's significant.
That is more than statistically significant.
That's very, very significant. Wow. What the hell deck is running this?
The First Sliver as a deck runs this. Golos Tireless Pilgrim is running this. Yarok the Desecrated is running this. Yasova Dragonclaw is running this. Volrath the Shape Stealer is running this. These are recent decks.
Oh, wow, dude. So Guardian Project doesn't care about the power or toughness of your creature. It's just that it is a creature and it entered the battlefield.
Yep.
Wow, man.
So now let's...
Okay, my mind might be changing a little bit on this.
Let's look at Beast Whisperer. And you're watching this live on the air, so don't mind us.
So Beast Whisperer is on cast, and it is more mana restrictive because it's 2 green, 2 colorless. Dies to bolt.
Dies to bolt. Dies to anything else.
It's also in 10% of these decks.
Yeah. A lower total number, but still in that 10% range.
Okay, so possibly any decks that are trying to do the Guardian card are also slamming Beast Whisperer in there because they're just trying to get a card draw engine going. Yeah, I see what's going on.
Although it is interesting that the decks that it has been showing up in most recently are all totally different decks.
Yeah, that's so weird. This site is so cool, man. EDHRec.com. EDHREC.com. So this runs statistics on each card to see, I mean, and that is a pretty significant database too. 134,000 decks that it's looking at, and it's recognizing Beast Whisperer as in 10% of them. That's insane. Now, is there any...
It also tells you there's a lot of fucking green decks in Commander.
Oh, for sure, dude. But so this is Commander decks that people just upload. They don't necessarily have to win a tournament or perform well with it.
Correct.
It just shows you what people are actually using in Commander.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Because this accounts for like tabletop Magic too. So,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, you might see cards in like MTG Top 8 that are good in dual commander, but you don't see what people are actually playing on tabletop Magic or what they care to upload to a list on a website like EDH
And
Rec.
I think you just pointed out a great point, which is they care to do this. Like, they care enough about their list. They're excited about it. They're interacting with the format or with this webpage because they want to be involved in the commander sphere or whatever.
And you don't just upload a deck of 100 unique cards without, you know, some sort of belief behind it. Usually, anyway. You know what I mean? If you're taking the time to type out or to select 100 different cards, you probably play it, and you probably have some vested interest in people wanting to know your list.
Now, this is interesting. I go on here every once in a while and look at what people are putting into their Nekusar lists.
Ooh, look at this card. Hey, here's another flashback for you. Underworld Breach, man.
Well, that one's done okay for you.
Yeah, we talked about that. I actually invested in at least a play set of these cards. That's in 45% of Nekusar decks. And Thassas Oracle also in there in 15%. I'm surprised that's not higher.
And I wonder if they're just looking at the most recent 40 decks uploaded. Because I know that, 1,785 total Nekusar decks have been uploaded. It's the 22nd most built deck.
Wow. This is so cool. So they even give you a breakdown on here that shows like a pie chart of the percentage of land, the count of land, planeswalker, the different card types, and the numbers associated with them. This is really cool, man. How did you ever find out about this site? This is...
Because I listen to MTG podcasts.
Oh, word. Dude, this is cool.
And so now we're just paying it forward.
Paying it forward.
And this is why in almost every episode that we've had so far, I've given a shout out to another podcast or another website or another MTG content creator, because we are part of a much broader ecosystem, and there's tons of information out there if you know where to get it.
Yeah. Yep. And hey, look, I'm just getting this information right now. This is huge. I'm going to go home and use this.
I was just going to say, Mike's going to spend 10 hours on this site now.
Well, this could be legitimately, you could use this to try to spec on card prices. Like, this is, you know, it seems like it's a very reactive to deck uploads. Like, the second someone's playing this card and they upload a list to this site, you're going to know about it. You don't have to wait for a big tournament to come out. You don't have to wait to see certain decks put up a result. You can see right away, this card's being used in this percent of decks.
So here's my shout out for this episode. Jason E. Alt, who is part of the Brainstorm Brewery podcast, is one of the content managers at EDH Rec. He always talks about it. He's sort of the commander guy in their podcast. And he will often say, don't buy the stuff, and you've said this too, don't buy the stuff that just got printed. Buy the stuff that's going to go up because of the stuff that just got printed. And then what he also says is, don't buy everything. Wait a week. Commander players are actually slow. And if you go to this website and look at what gets built, and then look at the cards that they include in those builds, you can then go out and buy those cards before the price wave hits, before things get too costly.
That's some insanely good advice, man. And yeah, on that point of Commander, I figured out something recently. Remember that card that I sold a playset of for $120, Tainted Pact, right?
Yeah.
Just figured out, okay? I don't know how we didn't put this together before, how I didn't. Brad probably did because he's smarter than me, but like, that's really good with Thassas Oracle. You can exile your whole deck, and that's probably why that card's going up. It just spiked up another $7 this week.
Well, and you said it last night. You were like, I don't understand why this card's going up, but I'm just glad I got rid of my copies. And I was like, Thassas Oracle? That's my guess. It's
really good. So Tainted Pact, basically, we talked about it last week. It allows you to exile your entire deck for 2 mana. Like, that's pretty sweet, man. I didn't even think of that. That's probably why it's still going up in price. It did. You know, look at this. I should have knocked on wood or something, because I said last week, I was like, I don't care if this card goes up to $50. I got rid of mine. Guess what? It went up to $50. I still don't feel bad about it. Like, I don't think it's a $50 card at all. Like, you know, it's but with Thassas Oracle, that's a hell of a combo piece. Like 2-card combo, just blam, slam Tainted Pact, slam a Thassas Oracle, win the game.
So this has been another episode of the Snapcast. I thank you, Mike, for coming over and hanging out.
Hey man, it's always a blast over here.
You got anything for our friends before we leave?
Look for us soon on iTunes. We're looking into some podcast hosts here, and I would say probably even by the time this episode airs, you might be able to find this on iTunes. So, you know, we definitely appreciate you guys going out and looking for us on there, showing us support in any way that you can, and we'll continue to keep you updated with that as things unfold.
Thanks, man. Always awesome.
Absolutely. Guys, have a great week.